Hi, Larry WD08KX. Today I wanted to show you there's a really cool radio kit I came across out there. Thanks to Kevin Carey, WB2QMY. He had a feature article in the October 2015 issue of the Spectrum Monitor magazine. And he mentioned this radio kit among many other kits. But when I saw that, I thought, I got to get one of these. It looked really cool. It's kind of a vintage retro look radio from the 1960s. A kit, a transistor radio. Now I do want to mention I'm not associated with the company that makes this kit in any way. It's just something I came across thanks to you, Kevin. And I thought it'd be a fun little project to do a video on. And it's a fun little radio too. So let's take a look at the video here. There are several sources out there. I found mine on Amazon. You might want to compare prices. Just do a search for the Tecsun 2P3 AM radio kit. I got mine for about $25 or so. In the 1960s, the transistor was the big thing in the transistor radio. So there was a case made called the 2P3. It looks similar to this. And do-it-yourselfers could make their own transistor radios using this case. So following up in that tradition, I guess, this is the retro 2P3 kit. Has a neat little box included to store your radio in or give it away as a gift, and a nice instruction manual with large print and diagrams. And everything is organized well. In previous versions I've read in the reviews there's a couple of resistors missing, a couple 10K. It looks like they did include them now in this more recent edition. This is the main circuit board. To the right of that is the loop antenna. And then we have the housing, the 2P3 housing, and some components below that separated into separate little plastic bags. And then we have the oscillator coil and IF transformers and the audio IC chip. This is a more modern component, and the variable capacitor for tuning the frequency, the volume control, and earphone jack. And then we have the battery compartment and the mount for the loop stick antenna and a little logo that will stick on the front of the radio. And on the back side we have the knobs and some mounting hardware. Now the first thing I'm going to do is kind of organize the parts and check the inventory, make sure everything's here. And one neat thing is these little plastic bags are labeled. You'll see a number 2 here, and over here in the manual you'll see 1, 2, and 3, and that corresponds to the little plastic bags. As you can see, the manual is a little cumbersome for on the workbench, but it does have a nice layout and things are shown very clearly, large print, a very nice diagram, and an explanation of all the parts. Now there's not a step-by-step instruction like the old Heath kits or anything, but kind of a brief overview of the order that you should install the parts, and you do have to be a little familiar with kit building for this. On the diagram it shows the different sections. Here's the audio output, but it does show the different sections to the radio, and it recommends starting with the audio amplifier section. So we're going to start with that section of the radio and just kind of continue on looking at the diagrams and the layout on the PC board. The parts are labeled very well on the PC board, so it doesn't look like it's going to be a problem at all. I'll just start inserting components, starting with the audio amplifier section here. And there's where the audio IC goes. You'll see a little bevel edge on there on the diagram and or on the board, and that does correspond to the component, which has a little edge like that also. So it does have to go in the proper direction. So I'm going to go ahead and solder this first component in. And then I'm going to go back and just kind of check my soldering after I'm done here. Make sure all the solder connections are nice and clean and there's no shorts between them. And then there are other components that are polarity sensitive. They do have to be mounted in the proper direction. There's a minus symbol on the capacitors here, and they have to correspond on the board. So I insert so many components at a time usually, and then solder them, and then I'll clip off the excess leads. And now I have most of the audio section done there. I'm just going to move around the board and try to populate the board with more parts as I see fit here. And I want to keep double checking my work as I go here, of course. Now this part of the PC board was designed to be snapped off by hand, and that's where the volume control is going to be mounted. And I'll show you how that is inserted on the board here in a minute. This is the volume control, and you want to insert that into this little board here. And you just want to solder the 3 legs to start with. 1, 2, and 3 here. And don't solder anything else yet, and I'll show you why here. Now this board will insert vertically onto the main board into these slots here. And I find it's kind of a tight fit. I can't really get it pushed down in there without breaking something. So I need to kind of file this down or use a little X-Acto knife here and kind of make them openings just a little bigger. And scrape a little off here on this little board. And now it snaps into place. There we go. Now it fits nice and snug. And I can solder up all these connections you see here to the main board so they all make nice contact. And now we need to deal with the loop antenna, the loop stick antenna. And you'll see holes on the board that correspond to the wires on the loop stick. And these wires are labeled on the diagram here and color coded, and they will be inserted into the holes you see on the board here. Now these wires are kind of fragile, so you need to be kind of careful with them. Now you can use a continuity meter or an ohm meter to verify each coil if you want to see which wire is connected to what. Just kind of verify the coil. And if you can't make out the color coding in that, if you take an ohm meter, connect on each side of the coil, you should have continuity. Do that to each one to verify each coil. These wires, like I say, are a little difficult to deal with. They're so small, but I did manage to get them in the holes and get them soldered and get the mount for the loop stick antenna on there and secured with a cable tie. That's included. Kind of tuck those wires away carefully out of the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and solder in the speaker wires. There's a white and a black wire provided, and they do correspond to a plus and a minus on the board and on the speaker. I use the white one for the plus and the black one for the minus. And over on the speaker you'll see a little plus symbol and a little minus symbol. So I'm going to install the knobs now. What I want to do first is to take the main tuning capacitor here, the variable capacitor, tune it all the way to the right or clockwise position, and then install the knob onto that with the 16 directly at the top. And it looks like that'll work, but I forgot a little screw here. I have to put a little screw in right here and then put that back on and we'll be fine. We're getting close. All my soldering is done, but I want to clean up the board, remove the excess solder flux. So I want to use some 91% isopropyl alcohol. You don't want to use the 70%. On the schematic diagram you'll see 3 points here, and this is going to be our test points before we complete the project. We need to measure current. Now these X's you see on the diagram are points that have not been connected yet. Now I will use my voltometer to measure current in milliamps, and I want to touch a lead on each side of the X you see on the diagram where the circuit is still open, so I can measure the current draw. And you'll see up above there the current reading in red in print, and that's what it should be in the ballpark of that range that you see here. And you'll notice a reading above each point there. And this will kind of test the radio before we power it up to make sure everything's correct. So I'll insert my batteries here to start with, and then I will take my test leads, put them across each point, power the radio up of course, and hopefully we get the proper readings here. And we're seeing let's make a good contact here, 0.403. That's within range on that reading according to the diagram. Let's go to the next point, and try to make a good contact here. It's hard to do. Small traces. 0.376, that's within range on point B there. Test point B. We'll go to C, and let's see what we get. 0.835, and that's within range, so it looks like we're good to go. Now, I have several meters around here, but in case you're wondering what this is a SOAR meter. I purchased in 1982 when I was in electronics trade school, and it still works good to this day. I use it on the bench a lot here. Amazing. Well, since those points checked okay, we need to fill in the solder gaps here now on each point, A, B, and C, in order for the radio to work, to complete the circuits. Let's turn it on, see what we get. I am pleased. Hearing signals. It does seem to be working. This is a good sign. Yeah, it's always fun to power up your kit for the first time and have it actually work. I almost forgot to install this standoff here. I need to do that so the rear of the case can be mounted to the board. So I did that, and now I need to install the speaker into the front housing, which I just did, and then I need to solder the wires onto the speaker. Now I can snap the board into place. It seemed to go in quite easy, and we'll check everything here to be sure everything is still working before I go any farther. Make sure the tuning dial tunes properly, which it does. And now it is alignment time, which you need to follow the instructions in the manual. But we want to start with this black coil down here first of all. This is an IF transformer, and the yellow one. And tune into a weak station, and you want to peak these for maximum signal. The tool I'm using is a little plastic tool they included in the kit. You don't want to use anything metallic. Now you want to move on to the red coil here and the lower tuning in the variable capacitor here if your dial is off. If it's on, I wouldn't mess with these. You can get things goofed up awful quickly. The top notch here is for peaking the signal. And you also want to slide the coil back and forth on the ferrite rod here to peak the signal. And you kind of have to work back and forth here. But like I say, if things are on and the radio is working good, I wouldn't touch these very much. You can get things goofed up really fast. So we'll put the back of the housing on. And this is the earphone jack here. And then there's a little logo. You can take your pick. There's a little adhesive thing you remove here, but you can take your pick. There's a different logo on each side of this, so you can stick it down whichever way you prefer, I guess. So we'll get that stuck down. And then as for this other piece, the only way I see is to use a little bit of glue. I'm not going to overdo it, but we'll get that to stick down good. And there we go. It looks pretty nice. So there is the completed radio. We'll do a little tuning around on the AM band.
Of the NFL, 100% verified. Of HEV still developing, but scientists have said the light. The shutout, Vic. I'm Brian LeCointe, CEO of Falk Safety Services. Why spend 50% of your training budget on
seems to be quite sensitive and plenty of volume. Very nice low-end bass response for a speaker this size.
Real this revelation.
So it's a fun little radio, fun little kit to build in a couple evenings time or less maybe. The one thing, I wouldn't recommend this kit to a beginner simply due to the fact that it doesn't have exact step-by-step install this part, then this part, you know. So if you have a mentor, it'd be a good starter kit if you have somebody that can follow along with you and kind of help you out. And you do have to know a little bit about soldering, of course, and a little bit about electronic components. If you've built kits before, you'll have no problem. It was a fun little kit, like I say. So thanks for watching. I'm Radio Ham Guy on YouTube. Don't confuse that with Ham Radio Guy. That's somebody else. So thanks again. So I hope you enjoyed that video there about this radio. I don't know. Boy. Start over.